Hello everybody, welcome back to my man cave. My name's Rob. I hope you enjoyed my first introduction a while back, and now I'm here and I want to talk about the engine. It is of my 1931 Fairey Gordon. It's an ex-Royal Air Force biplane bomber, and it's the last one. I found it 7 years ago and in a container, a barn find. So ever since then, putting the wreckage together. So the engine, it is a 14-cylinder Jaguar made in the 1920s, 30s by Armstrong Siddeley. It wasn't with the wreckage because when it crashed, the aircraft crashed, the Royal New Zealand Air Force went and salvaged the engines, the guns, the gauges, a few other bits, left everything in the trees. I found this engine and another in a Canadian museum. So if we look down here, pointing to here, I started with two very corroded, empty shells of engines, but by the time we'd finished, we had those two all ready, one to be packed away and the other one to be connected to the Gordon. So coming back to the aircraft, it had the original one of these was too badly wrecked, and I was quite lucky. Charles Darby had found a factory new one still in its proper wrapping, so that was the easiest way to go forward. The spinner and the propeller cowl were badly gone. The spinner's gone. It's in a tree somewhere in the South Island. This was badly broken, but I was able to pull it all back together, stitch it. I built a inner packing cowl, like a plate, and then I flush riveted and pulled it all back together. I think it's come out quite well. The propeller hit trees, so it's still got a bit of an arch, and the wingtips themselves, they've been bent over, but she's original and I don't want to be messing with any of that. It's part of the story. Now that you're looking up there, you'll see that it is black on the inside, and back in the day they left the face of it silver over to here, and then they would have a stripe, a black stripe, so when the aircraft propeller was running, no one would hopefully walk into it. Of course today, later on, going forward, all propellers were black with yellow tips for the same purpose. I don't know why they changed, just changing the modernity. If we come up around here, something that's interesting, and I do have fun with this story, there are some bullet holes. Now, the bullet holes have come from the front through to the back, and if you can come down to here, to where my table is, I think that the hub, the engine, and they took the engine but they left the hub. Everything was backpacked or carried out. Can you see how bent this is? That's the original hub left in the bush. I often say to everyone, what happened was propeller came off, went woom, 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 ended up in front of the aeroplane stopped, and the Vickers machine gun shot itself in its face. Of course, that's probably not what happened. I think what's happened is some farmer or some deer hunter found the wreckage, saw the propeller, and decided it'd be neat fun to do some target practice. But let's just go with that story. All right, when we come around to the manifolds and the exhaust pipes, They were quite badly bent as well. They're all looking pretty good now. I was lucky to find a blacksmith who was more of an artist than anything. He did sculptures and he knew how to bend with heat, and he took them apart right down their main seam and then blacksmith anviled them back to shape. My brief to him was, I don't mind a little bit of dents, just get their shape back so they can fit onto the aircraft, but I want the patina, I want the rust, I want the smoke stains, I want anything he can save. And he did an excellent job. He didn't do too much, which is half the journey I've had with everyone that's helped me along the way. If they do too much or they're doing too much, I take it off them and I sit them down and explain the way it should be. So as we come around, I'm going to point down to, if that probably better explains how badly bent they were. That was in a funny shape. That was the manifold, and the propeller was flattened and it had crimps. The other one was just as bad, but he got them to be that. That's how they turned up to me. I was so amazed that he was able to pull it off. All right. I want to, before we get to the engine itself, I've already done the precursor of turning the fasteners to get this off. I built this. The panel, it doesn't exist, but I've kept the originals where I can, even if it means putting a little plate behind and stitching it together, because those are the beautiful real parts of the aeroplane. So here we go. That comes off. This is a panel that I made. I just bent by hand with bars, with little pipes, crimped it over. They had machines in those days, but anyway, that's how I pulled my one together. Just to show you that the engine mounts, these engine mounts, they were on the aircraft with the ring, but they were broken. So I've welded here. There was the engine mounts on the aircraft, and then the other engine mount, this ring, engine mount ring, was on the ground. You can see that in the original photographs. So what I did was, I was able to flitch and stitch a pipe through, just like I did with everything else. There's a pipe, painted it yellow green to show what it was. You might think it's hilarious. If you can look up in there, right up in there, that is a brand new engine mount on that half. We couldn't find it, didn't. So what we did was, we built a new one. It was about a year ago. I was going through a box of parts, and guess what? I have found it. So one day, I'm going to be taking the whole front of the aeroplane off and doing it there as well, because if it's real, if it's original, it stays with the aeroplane. It is in there. This is an interesting view, because up there in the hole is the oil tank and the fuel tanks. They were very badly broken on the port side, and everything was needed to be a lot of work. In another show, I will show you. I'll take the side panel off and I'll explain how I got them to be real, but I've kept all the internal plumbing. They all fit in the new brackets, or the fixed brackets, I would like to say, because I have kept as much of the same that came off back again. It just needed to fit within the cowls, under the cowls. They didn't before, everything was smashed. So that's another show. We come up to the engine. It is a 14-cylinder Jaguar Armstrong Siddeley, made by Armstrong Siddeley. The serial numbers work between the main engine part and the reduction gearing housing. There are two stamps that both are the same. They kept this on the original engine from the museum, so that was all good. The problem was, had none of these rocker pipes, none of the fixings, and only some of these rocker rocker handles or rocker arms. But everything else was there, just rusty, ugly, unloved. It had been sitting in a field for many years. When we had no spark plugs. These are period authentic spark plugs, but I remember one day, and I do have a photo, I might try to dig it out, I put an air gun into one of those, into the cylinder, and then a big cloud of rusty dust flew into the air with a whole lot of seeds from some cornfield somewhere or maize field, and got covered in rubbish, got covered in dust, but what a lot of fun that was. And I took these to Seeker Aluminium, one of these, and they just cast a whole lot of them, heaps of them. So that was fine, we could drill and we could put them in. These little, excuse the cobweb, it's been here a while. These little bits here, they're from a Honda hatchback. They've just been screwed up into the pipe, aluminium pipe, and they've got a little ball joint, and they suffice. They're very cosmetic, but they do the job. I'm sorry about the plastic red loom. They were originally some sort of I don't know, what would you call it, cardboardy, orange cardboardy. I'll go down to the firewall in a minute and I'll show you the kind of material it was. But anyway, just to finish the engine, finish it off, makes it as displayable and fun to look at as I can possibly do. And without the power plant, I would not have even attempted this project. And there's only 6 in the world, so very lucky that she has one. Can we go around? I'm going to go around now because I did build a firewall. I built another firewall because I didn't want to mess around with the original firewall, which was